At the beginning, the Soviet Union came apart. The United States was without a national security strategy. We did peacekeeping, we worked in Europe, but we never went to the American people with any strategy. We just stumbled through. 9/11 happened, and suddenly we were at war. At that point, it all became about terrorism in the Middle East. Afghanistan was, we had to do it, but we could hardly wait to get back and take it out on Saddam Hussein. It's like a man told me at Davos in 2003, he said, please, you're a general, explain to these people, the road to Jerusalem runs through Baghdad. And so this became all caught up in American domestic policy. It became caught up in a struggle for the support of the Democratic Party or Republican Party and so forth. In 2009, we had a new president, and he said he wasn't going to repeat old mistakes. He had a good idea. He looked at the economics. He said, this is about Asia. And so there was a private meeting between the Americans and the Russians around 2011 at the very highest level, and it went like this. Now, we're interested in space and Asia. We're not worried about Europe, but don't mess with us in space and Asia. You can do what you want. And this was the open door for the German-Russian strengthening of the economic relationships, the energy dependence of Germany on Russia, and the disinterest of the American security establishment. Now, military guys, my era, we spent half our time in Germany. We love Wiener Schnitzel. We love going to those pubs that Mike Pompeo talked about. We had our Kameradschaft with our partnership German units, and the German units were great units. And we even talked about, now I never met a German who fought Americans in World War II, but I met many who fought on the Eastern Front. And we had a lot of good exchanges with them. That all disappeared. Guys from Mike Pompeo's generation on, they're all counterterrorism, Middle East focused, thinking about Iraq, how to use drones because they have no competition and so forth. And then they got a mission to go against China. The Marine Corps got rid of its tanks. It's going to have isolated groups firing long-range missiles at ships that are sailing 500 miles away in the South China Sea. The Army realized it didn't need heavy forces as much. It got rid of them. We had 4 divisions, 2 independent brigades, 2 armored cavalry regiments here in the 1980s. We're down to a rented 1 armored division that rotates in and out, and some other lighter units and a hospital and some logistics. The United States made in my view, critical mistake in misunderstanding that if you want to manage China, you must have Europe. And so if you don't mind, Ann, I'd like to just extend on this a little bit. You can't have Europe if you turn your back on it. It doesn't work. And yet, I still hear members of the American establishment coming to tell the Europeans, you people are going to have to do more for yourselves over here because we got to handle China. It's exactly the wrong approach. What we need is a complete condominium of interest, security, economic, technical, military, cultural between the United States and Europe. Then you have the total package to be able to say to China, look, it's a big world. We can all get along. There's no reason to fight about things. Let's go to the moon together. But right now, we're not seeing it that way. And that's the problem. And it's as though it's really unfortunate that Ukraine is here because it's really distracting us. We'd really like to focus on China, and you people keep telling us to give ATACMS and tanks and training and F-16s and stop. I mean, we've got Congress telling us, I'm just saying what Congress says, you got to be ready to fight the Chinese in 2 years. And we just heard Admiral so-and-so say the Chinese 2027, and this Air Force guy says they're coming after us. So it's a very confused dialogue in the United States. But here's my message. There's one way forward. Number one, America has to understand its future is locked in step with Europe unless it wants to be an isolated country out there on the fringes. That means labor standards, environmental standards, technical standards, not just military. We got to get closer together. Secondly, there's no bypassing Ukraine. Ukraine is not a speed bump in the way to dealing with China. Ukraine and success here is fundamental to dealing with China. And it starts with the articulation of a policy. And I'm sorry, but staying as long as you want, as long as it takes, and saying, but we don't want a confrontation with Russia. That's not a policy. That's a political statement.
Thank you.
What's the policy? Russia leaves Ukraine, reparations, all people returned, war crimes committed. That's the policy. And then you sit down and develop your requirements, the military requirements as well as the diplomatic requirements. You develop those requirements the same way we developed Operation Overlord in World War II to cross the British Channel. And I promise you, you develop those channels. Mike Pompeo just told you, Putin's a risk calculator. You develop those requirements, you start fulfilling them, you're going to find Russia suddenly very interested in negotiations and would like to have some Western development support.
Thank you.